Cyclone Narelle has formed earlier than expected in the Coral Sea, way off the coast of far north Queensland for now, but it looks like it could hit the coast as a Category 4. So right now it's a Category 1 system, about 1,200 k's northeast of Cooktown and heading towards Cape York Peninsula. It's expected to intensify to a Category 4 system, so it's a powerful cyclone with a likely crossing between Lockhart River and Port Douglas later in the week. As you can see from that line at the moment, looks like it's headed for about Cohen. The Bureau of Meteorology's forecast suggests that after crossing the Queensland coast, Cyclone Narelle will track across the Gulf of Carpentaria and into the Northern Territory, where there's been all that rain and there's still pretty bad flooding right now. The Reserve Bank has lifted its cash rate for the second time in as many months. And with the war in the Middle East, economists are warning there could be more bad news to come. Rates have been increased by 1/4 percentage point, taking the cash rate to 4.1%. For someone with $750,000 mortgage, that means an extra $113 more every month. And the big four banks have all announced they will pass the increase on.
More pain for Australian borrowers.
Ultimately, with inflation that is already too high, the board decided raising the cash rate was the right call.
Inflation above target and a war in the Middle East helping to spark a fresh rate rise.
We've got an inflation challenge in our economy already, and developments in the Middle East are making that worse.
For the second month in a row, the RBA has lifted the cash rate by 1/4 percentage point in a split vote 5-4, taking it up to 4.1%, back to where it was a year ago. If lenders pass on the rate hike in full, homeowners with a $750,000 mortgage will see their minimum repayment rise by about $113 a month, which means they're now paying $226 more on their home loan since the RBA began lifting rates last month. For a $1 million mortgage, repayments will increase by $151, meaning they'll be paying more than $300 extra.
In breaking news, the Reserve Bank has increased the cash rate by...
It's certainly not the news Anna Sri wanted to hear.
I don't have a lot of non-regular expenses that are, I would say, discretionary spending, really. It's probably just food that I could cut.
The RBA governor was tight-lipped on what might happen next.
If we don't see the numbers indicating that we're going to see a slowing in underlying inflation, let's assume that it stays at 3.5%, then unfortunately we're going to see another rate rise from here.
Would you be prepared to put Australia into recession if that's what it takes to bring inflation much lower?
We don't want to have a recession, but if it's hard to get inflation down, then, we're going to have to deal with that.
Australia now has higher interest rates than many other economies like the US, UK and Canada. But it doesn't seem to be working because inflation here is also higher than in those countries. So that suggests even more rate hikes might be needed. Balancing that pain against the risk of recession, which no one wants. David Chow, ABC News.
And record fuel prices are not to blame for today's interest rate rise, according to the RBA, but they are contributing to the country's inflation challenge. Australia's biggest fuel companies were hauled before the competition watchdog as the government sought to allay fears of supplies running out. Here's National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman.
From coast to coast, pain at the pump. Drivers navigate prices they've never paid before.
It's $100 extra every week now.
At one of Sydney's busiest low-cost servos, business has slowed to a crawl.
It's very quiet now. It's hardly 2 customers in 1 hour.
In some areas, diesel now topping $3 a litre. That's above the national average, according to the NRMA, which has unleaded hovering around $2.30.
We are now where we expect to be. That is cold comfort to Australians looking at the price boards and seeing the most expensive prices they've ever had to pay for.
Fuel companies today hauled before the competition watchdog to explain the rapid price spikes as the Treasurer moves to double fines for those found to be price gouging.
They are on notice.
The government is on alert, but seeking to hose down concerns fuel supplies could dry up.
All companies say to me that they fully expect all deliveries all through March and well into April.
That uncertainty fueling panic buying and creating shortages in regional areas. For now, rationing is off the table.
because we don't believe at this point that's what is the best solution.
A good start is to make sure that Australian fuel isn't being exported.
Ampol's Brisbane refinery currently exports the petrol it produces because it doesn't yet meet Australian standards. Last week, those standards were temporarily lowered to allow the fuel to flow into the domestic market. It's one of only 2 refineries left onshore, leaving Australia to import 90% of its liquid fuels.
We must get back to drilling for oil and gas.
The war in Iran has sparked a broader debate about how Australia can bolster its fuel security. But the government's focused on the immediate crisis and the huge challenges it presents for the economy. The Treasurer was already planning a tough budget with little room for new cost of living relief. For now, he's holding the line, knowing further spending would only worsen inflation. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
And there'll be more on the interest rate rise on 7:30 when Sarah Ferguson interviews the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers. Donald Trump has scolded America's allies who've rebuffed his request to help protect oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz. It comes as some of those countries warn Israel against its ground offensive in Lebanon, arguing the humanitarian situation there is already alarming. ABC correspondent Catherine Diss reports from Machula, near the Israel-Lebanon border.
A wave of drone and rocket attacks on the American embassy in Baghdad. Air defence systems activated. A nearby hotel in the Iraqi capital also targeted. Hundreds of kilometres away, Iranian missiles are intercepted by Israeli forces. Shrapnel falling onto a home in the occupied East Jerusalem and in the Old City, home to holy sites.
The Iranian regime is trying to create as much chaos as possible.
Chaos in Iran too, as the US and Israel continue their assault. Search and rescue crews pulling survivors from the rubble in Tehran.
There are no IRGC forces, no military personnel and no base here. All of these are homes.
Iran is leveraging its ability to cause economic pain, with traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remaining mostly at a standstill. The US president is ramping up pressure on other nations to help protect oil tankers in the critical shipping lane, warning he could delay his upcoming trip to China and taking another swipe at NATO countries.
Thank you very much. We don't need them, but it's interesting. I'm almost doing it in some cases, not because we need them, but because I want to find out how they react.
We will not be drawn into the wider war.
The wider war expanding again as Israel conducts what it's called a limited ground operation against the Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Lebanon. In Israel's north, the military build-up on this side of the border is clear.
We're just hearing an air raid siren now. That's telling us to take shelter. So let's move. Okay. While it's too early to know whether this limited and targeted campaign will become a full-scale ground invasion, we are constantly hearing rounds of artillery being fired into Lebanese territory, and the Israeli government is reportedly undertaking a mass mobilisation campaign of 450,000 reservists.
Cafe owner Miri Menashe hopes to be one of them.
You keep your country safe, you fight for it. Eventually, you live in peace.
The prospect of peace uncertain in an ever-escalating conflict. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Machula.
The 2 players from the Iranian women's soccer team who chose to stay in Australia have been training with the Brisbane Roar A-League club. The women joined the team for a practice session as they adjust to their new lives. They're the only 2 members of Iran's team still in Australia after 4 of their fellow players and a team handler withdrew their bid for asylum. Brisbane Roar shared the images on social media, prompting one of the Iranian players to write, "Thank you for everything." Afghanistan's Taliban government has accused Pakistan of killing at least 400 people in an attack on a hospital in Kabul. The government says an airstrike destroyed parts of the 2,000-bed facility used for the treatment of drug users. Pakistan has dismissed the accusation, saying its strikes had not hit any civilian sites. It marks a dramatic escalation in a conflict that began late last month. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of harbouring militants, a claim the Taliban denies. A 30-year-old woman has discovered an IVF bungle in the 1990s means she and her twin sister are not biologically connected to the woman who gave birth to them and raised them. It's the second known case in Australia of an embryo being transferred to the wrong family during IVF treatment. Now the family in this latest case is exclusively telling their story to the ABC's Elise Kinsella.
Sasha Safransky grew up in Coffs Harbour with her mum and twin sister. At the time, she didn't know she had a whole other family just a short drive away.
That's my family home. And then if we just do a jump over to this little clearing here, that's where the biological family live now.
Last year, she sent her DNA to the genealogy tracing website Ancestry.com. Weeks later, the website matched her with a stranger, saying it was her maternal aunt. Together, the pair uncovered a life-altering error. Sasha Safransky and her twin sister were the biological children of a couple they'd never met.
That's really when it started to sink in. Perhaps something's gone awry.
She and her twin sister then told their mother, who birthed and raised them.
They just sort of said, there was a mix-up, Mum. We're not your biological children. I said, what? What are you talking about?
The family still don't know how the mistake happened. Penny Safransky's embryo transfer was at Royal North Shore Hospital in 1995. But the hospital says it didn't run the clinic then. A private company did. It was sold in the early 2000s, and that company was later acquired by Virtus Health, which also denies responsibility. Has anyone apologised to you?
No, because no one's owning up. No one's accepting responsibility for us.
What do you want our politicians and regulators who oversee IVF to know?
I want them to see the stakes of what happens when there's a mistake. I think IVF is just incredible. I wouldn't be here without it, but you just have to get it right.
And you can see more of that exclusive ABC story with Sasha and Penny on tonight's 7:30 and on ABC TV and anytime later on ABC iView. A Sydney court has heard the mother and siblings of the alleged Bondi Beach gunman Naveed Akram live in constant fear for their safety. His lawyers have asked a magistrate to suppress their identities. The 24-year-old is yet to enter pleas to nearly 60 charges in connection with the shootings, which claimed 15 lives during a Jewish event in December. His lawyers have told a magistrate the gunman's relatives have received death threats. A lawyer representing media outlets, including the ABC, opposed the suppression, saying the information is already public. A final decision will be handed down in about 2 weeks. A warning, this next report contains graphic images. New offences and tougher penalties to combat hate crimes against the LGBT+ community have been introduced into the New South Wales Parliament. The crackdown comes after the ABC exposed a wave of homophobic violence, including attacks inspired by Islamic State.
Lured with dating apps.
You want to be gay? You want to be gay? Where's your phone? Where's your phone?
Young men and teenagers bashed in Sydney's suburbs.
His friends, they're all covered in black, all came and jumped me.
Jump it. Stop!
It's reminiscent of violence in decades past.
We will not allow that in New South Wales in 2026.
There'll be a new offence of luring someone under false pretences with the intent to commit violence, plus the expansion of so-called post and boast offences to cover serious assaults and robberies, so offenders face an extra 2 years jail on top of the base penalty. Sentencing reforms will make it easier to prove offences are motivated by hate, so perpetrators can be punished accordingly.
One is that this sort of hate is prevalent and needs to be stamped out, but secondly, it's probably only the tip of the iceberg.
Maximum penalties for inciting violence will increase from 3 to 5 years and up to 7 years if it results in physical violence. But as of last month, this offence has never been used for attacks based on sexual orientation or gender identity.
I would say it's a failure probably in education of frontline police officers.
Former Judge John Sacker has made recommendations on whether the crime of racial hate speech should be expanded to protect LGBTQIA+ people and other vulnerable groups. But the government has sat on his report since November.
Well, we haven't made a decision about it yet. The report's with Cabinet.
We do need broader incitement of hatred laws.
A push to criminalise speech, which advocates say begets violence. Alexander Lewis, ABC News, Sydney.
As the war in the Middle East enters its third week, people in the United Arab Emirates, including 24,000 Australian expats, are navigating a new normal. Dubai, which is home to one of the world's busiest airports, has long been seen as a regional safe haven. But airport closures and drone attacks in populated areas are damaging that carefully cultivated reputation. Global Affairs editor Laura Tingle reports from Dubai.
Striking at the heart of Dubai's financial hub, debris setting this skyscraper alight.
Target destroyed.
For more than 2 weeks, the UAE has fended off hundreds of Iranian drones and missiles.
Oh my God.
Disrupting air travel, putting off tourists who usually pack these iconic sites.
When you heard the alert, when you hear the thuds of interception and so forth, incredible unease. And then a feeling of resilience started to set in. Well, people were like, we will not be cowards.
Australian businessman Brett Evans still feels safe living in Dubai.
The government has been very forthright in terms of keeping us informed. The information flows through and we're able to get direction from the government and able to make informed decisions. Then I can't see any reason to leave.
In Abu Dhabi, Australia's ambassador to the UAE is now working from home.
Throughout the day we hear the piercing sounds of the emergency security alerts and you hear these very loud explosions or bangs that shake the house and the windows.
Last week, Australia sent a surveillance aircraft to help the UAE against Iranian bombardment.
We've been working around the clock because our main priority is, of course, the safety and security of the Australian community.
While both Emiratis and the huge international residents community in the UAE are adjusting their day-to-day lives to the uncertainty of constant bombardments, the outlook is highly uncertain. The Gulf state has prospered by becoming a global air transport hub through tourism and as a major financial centre. But Iran's strategy is designed to shake the confidence of investors and travellers alike.
People are asking questions about property prices, about tourism, about airlines. But so far, it's still quite early days to be able to assess those. We didn't want this fight.
A fight they didn't start and can't end. Laura Tingle, ABC News, Dubai.
The Danish royals have continued their tour of Australia with a packed day of events in Melbourne. The pair met leaders and businesses focused on a green future and finished by testing their skills at an Aussie Rules clinic at the MCG.
Australia's famous sport on Melbourne's famous ground. Was no match for a Tasmanian-born queen, as the Danish royal couple trod the hallowed turf of the MCG, rubbing shoulders with Hawthorn stars. But it wasn't always easy to stay on target. Before the kids showed the Queen how it was done. Melbourne had a Viking flavour to welcome King Frederick and Queen Mary as they signed their names into history on their first visit to Victoria in over a decade. The pair were welcomed by the Governor this morning, the Victorian Premier waiting in the wings for her moment.
Lovely to see you. Your Majesty, how are you? Lovely to welcome you to Victoria. How are you? Lovely to meet you both.
The royal couple with their sights set on a green energy future.
Queen Mary and I hope that many new, possibly historical, outcomes will materialise between Denmark and Australia as an outcome of our visit here in Melbourne.
The Queen also reflected on her past life in the city.
I lived here for 3 years and a lot's changed since there, but there's one thing that's still there and that's the prawn pool.
The royal couple used today's visit to speak with local and Danish business leaders, fostering the connection between the two countries with a special focus on sustainability and technology.
Partnering across borders for a green, secure and sustainable tomorrow is a central objective of this visit.
The couple will spend one more day in Melbourne tomorrow before heading to the island state for a homecoming fit for a queen. Costa Haritos, ABC News, Melbourne.
To finance now, and surprisingly, the Australian dollar fell and the share market went up when today's rate hike was announced. Here's Alan Kohler.
Usually when interest rates go up, you'd expect the currency to go higher and the share market to fall. But that's not what happened today. At 2:30, the Australian dollar fell and the All Ordinaries on the share market went up, then went down, then went up again. Traders were on an emotional roller coaster. So why did that happen? Well, maybe because the vote was a close call. 4 of the 9 members of the Monetary Policy Board voted to leave rates on hold, but were outvoted by the other 5. Who voted what, we don't know. But I would note that the board consists of 5 full-time economists with either PhDs or master's degrees, including the Governor and the Deputy Governor, plus 3 business people and the Treasury Secretary. That's 4. Now, whoever the 4 were who voted against a hike, maybe they had in mind that this would actually be the 3rd one this year. The second one being the increase in petrol prices since February the 28th, which has added the equivalent of about 80% of a rate hike to family outgoings. And unsurprisingly, consumer sentiment is now tanking. So the question is, are we miserable enough yet? Beleaguered borrowers only need one of the voters on the board to flip for the May decision to be a hold. And in fact, because of that, the market has now reduced the odds of a May hike from 100% to 36%. The Aussie dollar is changing hands for about the same as it was last night. The price of Brent crude oil is back above $100 a barrel, up 3%. Global share markets went up today, led by a solid gain in New York last night, so markets are pretty sure that the war in Iran and the closure of the Persian Gulf won't go on for much longer. And the local share market went up a bit thanks to gains by banks and miners. And that's finance.
Tonight, the Matildas will take on defending champions China in the first semi-final of the Women's Asian Cup at Perth Stadium. Many of the previous World Cup squad remain in the current Australian lineup, including captain Sam Kerr and goalkeeper Mackenzie Arnold. Both teams have already secured automatic qualification for next year's Women's World Cup in Brazil. The winner will play either South Korea or Japan in Sydney in Saturday's final. The NRL is celebrating Multicultural Round this week with 66 national heritages represented across the game. More than a quarter of NRL players were born overseas, underlining the competition's diversity.
Everyone looking here for me, thank you.
For Penrith winger Casey McLean, this week is a chance to celebrate his Māori and Chinese heritage.
It means a lot, I suppose. There's a few fair of us boys that, kind of think of, culture first.
Multicultural Round shines a light on the backgrounds that shape the game, from family to community.
Being able to, come down to one of these gala days, I suppose, see all these little kids where I was once upon a time.
Big smiles. Across the NRL, players are proudly representing their roots.
It's really cool, especially being from a little island of Malta. It's really cool to be here and celebrate the multicultural round.
For McLean, that cultural connection extends beyond Penrith. His cousin Joe Chan will also celebrate his Chinese heritage with Melbourne, as the Storm look to continue their strong start to the season in a grand final rematch against the Broncos.
I think last year's in the past. Broncos got the win last year and, we got a clean slate and it's a new opportunity, a new year.
Cleary! After a stunning round 1 victory, the Sharks were brought back down to earth by the Panthers on the weekend.
I think you always want to verse the best teams in the competition, and to come up against them early was a great sign of where we're at and a test for us.
They next face the Dolphins at home on Saturday. Sam Yeoman, ABC News.
Collingwood veteran Scott Pendlebury's clean record stands after successfully fighting his one-match rough conduct charge at the tribunal. The Magpie Premiership star was instead fined $3,000 and will now face the Giants in 10 days.
Scott Pendlebury has proved there's a first time for everything. After 427 games, just 5 games off the all-time games record, the 38-year-old made his tribunal debut for this bump.
So clash your heads with Worrell and Pendlebury.
But his one-match ban was overturned after the Magpies argued the veteran was bracing for contact and recognised his exemplary record of just 3 fines in 21 seasons.
He's too old for that sort of stuff, isn't he?
2 games into his AFL career and already Jagger Smith has a Rising Star nomination on his resume. The 20-year-old watched on last season after rupturing his ACL, but found a silver lining in the elite game of his All-Australian teammate Sam Walsh.
I was lucky enough I was able to sit in a few of his reviews, so it was actually like I was playing a game each week.
The Demons' 13-point win to start the year is something to celebrate. Sidelined until round 8 with an Achilles injury, but Jack Viney is itching to be part of Melbourne's new offensive game style.
It's exciting for sure. I want to be part of it ASAP. You can train it for months amongst yourselves, but until you really come up against competition, you're not sure how you're going to shape up.
Irish star Zach Toohey helped the Demons celebrate the return of Jim's game, the round 6 clash dedicated to Irish player Jim Stynes, and now wants to see the International Rules Series back on the calendar.
Unless there's some logistical issue that I'm not aware of, I can't see why you wouldn't bring a men's and women's series back in tandem.
Meanwhile, Essendon won't panic just yet, refusing to sound the alarm despite a 62-point round 1 loss to Hawthorn.
It's not throwing everything out right now. There's an element of they were very good versus us, and some of the mistakes are, maybe a little bit of opening night nerves.
Alexia Pesce, ABC News.
Taking a look at the satellite image, an upper-level disturbance is associated with a band of mid to high-level clouds streaming over southeastern Australia. Spotty low-level cloud lies over much of the Australian tropics. On the synoptic chart, thunderstorms in the tropics are drawing increasingly heavy rain into South Australia. Cold fronts crossing Tasmania are producing showers mainly in the west. Looking at around the country for tomorrow, starting in Queensland, scattered showers and thunderstorms about the far west and southern interior. Isolated rain about the eastern districts. To New South Wales and the ACT, widespread rain and isolated thunderstorms in the far west, with possible falls in the far northwest corner. In Victoria, isolated showers mainly about the northeast and alpine regions. Possible rain developing along the New South Wales border, dry elsewhere. In Tassie, mostly fine after morning valley fog. Afternoon sea breezes about the northern and eastern coasts. In South Australia, showers about the northern agricultural area and pastoral districts, possibly extending into the north. For WA, possible morning fog over the far south coastal districts. In WA's north, rain and thunderstorms, and for the Northern Territory, showers in the north, possible rain over the interior and clearing rain in the south. Looking ahead to Thursday's forecast for the capital cities, Brisbane and Sydney a shower or 2, Canberra possible storms, cloudy in Melbourne, overcast in Hobart and Adelaide, Perth sunny and a possible afternoon storm in Darwin. And before we go, just mentioning once again, Cyclone Narelle has formed a bit earlier than expected in the Coral Sea, way off the coast of far north Queensland for now, but it looks like it could hit the coast as a Category 4. So right now it's Category 1 system, about 1,200 k's northeast of Cooktown and heading towards Cape York. It's expected to intensify to a Category 4 with a likely crossing between Lockhart River and Port Douglas later in the week around Friday. The Bureau of Meteorology's forecast suggests that after crossing the Queensland coast, Cyclone Narelle will track across the Gulf of Carpentaria and into the Northern Territory, where there's been all that flooding, and there's still some flooding around in the Territory right now. There's more on the ABC News app and on ABC iView. Stay with us for 7:30.